Hey guys, Chief Rudy here, and this is the project for Legitness here, and I'm really excited to show you guys what I've done with this track. There's a lot of chords going on here and some pads that I'm going to show you, and the drum samples and the bass synths. So without any further ado, let's get into this. So right here in the project of Legitness, the first thing I'm going to point out is it is 124 BPM. It's just kind of a slow, chilled vibe that the BPM gave it. So I didn't want it to be up at 140 where it's all like rushed. I wanted it to be slower, not quite like 130 kind of slow. So I went down to 124. That's about where it worked with the style of this track. So that's what I have the BPM there. So I'm going to show you the kick samples. So here's the kick I have. Actually, I have two kicks here. I have the main kick and I have a secondary kick right here. So the reason I have these is one is a harder kick and the other is a lighter kick, obviously. And that is because it's easier to mix a song if you actually have multiple drum samples. So like for soft parts of the song, I would use this kick and this snare, or in heavy parts of the song, I'd use this kick and this snare. So in Legitness, I did not end up using this snare at all, but I did end up using this kick a little bit. So that's a tip there for when you're mixing. It does make it easier to have a main kick and then the secondary kick. Lower volume, and I didn't put any reverb on the secondary. Oh, I did. Oh, okay, I clicked the wrong one. No notebook. Accidentally opening stuff. Okay. So I have a reverb here, very slight, and then the main kick, I have a little bit more reverb. So I know it is a little weird to put reverb on the kick, but I just like to do that. It kind of opens it up a little bit more and adds in that kind of the tail effect, though you don't really end up hearing that in the song. It just adds a little, it kind of fills it up a little bit better. But that's kind of a lot of time spent on the kick drums, so I think you've understood that. And I have a crash here. And I put this onto track 8, where I didn't put any effects on it, but I turned it up a little bit. So I have this crash. The crash is going very often in Legitness. You can see in these two lines right here, it is just the crash. So I use a lot of crashes in this song. And yeah, so choose a good sample if you're using a lot of crashes. And then I have this ride that goes into the second part. So let me solo all the drums here. So yeah, that should be it. So, as you can see, I took out the kick, because when I was showing you the kick I didn't put it back in. But I did play a kick with the crash at the same time. The reason I did that is it gives the crash more bass. Like, it sounds better with a kick rather than without the kick. So, here's a crash with the kick, and if I put a crash here without the kick, you can spot the difference. It just sounds much more powerful, more bassy with the kick there. So I like to put kicks with the crashes, though that is just preference. I just like to do that. But then it goes into this ride, which is just a ride sample. It's the GRV Ride 1 Wave. And I put this on track 9, where I boosted up the volume because it was getting kind of quiet. So I wanted to be able to hear the cymbals. So that is it for the drum samples. Now I'm going to show you this. This is the sound effects. So what this synth is doing is basically, it's just a phaser and a prism going through this prism envelope. So it's just a saw wave with a phaser on it, and then it has some of these, the time and limiting from the Legitio on there, and the prism, and then you can see the prism is on multiplication going down. So if it was just on addition, it'd be like this. That's kind of weak. So when it's on multiplication, then it really comes out. So that's what's going on here. Is it has the unison, the phasers, and then the prism. And this was the preset, what was it? Now it's gone. The preset Oblivion. It's somewhere in Harmore in all the presets down here. So I think it's under pads. like Oblivion. Okay, well, it's somewhere in here. It's called Oblivion if you wanted to look for it. I did make some changes to it, so it won't be exactly like this, but I probably played with the prism and the phaser amount. So I put this onto track 13, where I didn't put any effects on it because pretty much with Harmor, you can do every effect you want inside of Harmor. Like chorus, reverb, delay, distortion, and compression. And then you have the phaser, pluck, unison, and prism. Like there's so much stuff you can do inside of Harmor. But I could have done it on here, but I didn't. So I turned it up here so you could hear it, because it's good to be able to hear stuff you add into a track. And then here I have some chords. These are just the chords playing through the song. So this synth I did make here, and let me show. Oh, it's a lower octave. Oh, it's an octave below that. So what I did with this synth is I did automate the pluck amount inside of an envelope. The reason I did that is without that it'd sound like this. So then it would be like this. As opposed to. So I just automated the pluck amount in an envelope here just to kind of cut off some of the chords, like as it did, because I wanted to get that effect to cut it off. And I have 9 voices of unison here. I don't have any harmonizers, which I normally would add on chords, but this sounded weird and it did not fit the chill out style of Legitness. So down here is where it fits. And I have 9 voices of chorus as well, so without the chorus or unison, it sounds like that. And that's kind of bad. And I put this onto track 15, where I added on some reverb and some EQ, where I boosted up the highs around 6,835 hertz. So that's where I did there. So not too complex with those chords, pretty simple, but with chords you don't have to get too complex. They're kind of just background, as this was here. And then this is the filter 1 frequency fading them in. And then they get faded in 100% halfway through the rise. So it takes them a long time to fade in. And you can kind of hear that. Like just a little bit. So then, on top of that, I do have more chords with the pads. This is kind of the main lead. I can see I faded this in with the frequency as well. So with these pads here, anyways, into these pads, I have this filter frequency here. Let me play the pattern. This is how I faded them in. Well, see if I get this like dubstep. It does kind of sound like a wobble bass. Well, I was just kind of testing stuff out, so let's reset that. Okay, so reset the pitch, so it's in key again. And I have the harmonizer, which is going about like 40%, because I don't want this to be like too crazy. Like, that's kind of crazy. So, right around like right there is where I wanted it. And then I have this harmonizer. This one I left default. And then I turned up the stir 25%. And then I have 9 voices of unison. So it sounds like this. So the unison really does help that a lot. And then I put this in that. Oh, well, first I'm going to tell you, I turned down the gain a little bit right here with this volume. Because on the mixer track, instead of just turning this down, I just went down to here to turn that down. Just a little easier. I was probably already inside of Harmor. So just to let you know that, you know, there's volume here, and also the volume right here, this is volume 2. This volume affects this volume 2. So just to let you know, like these two, see, I turn this down all the way, and then right here it's down all the way. So they're both connected. Anyways, that's on to track 20, where I put a reverb on it. to give it some reverb, and then a maximus for compression. And I wanted to compress this because without this it gets pretty loud. So it was like right there, as opposed to this. So you can probably hear a difference, and mainly what it's compressing is the mids and highs and lows. So see, it's having normal compression on the highs, a little bit more on the mids, and then a little more on the lows. So you can tell that when it goes in and out, you can kind of tell some highs decreasing because those are getting more compression. Because with the EQ here, most of what's happening is right here in the mids. There's less on the highs and most of it's in the mids. So since most of it's in the mids there, the compression on the mid tab right here would do more. So that's why the compression cuts off some of the highs. Off, on, off, on. So if you can't hear that, that's okay. You probably just don't have a really good speaker, or it's just too quiet. So yeah, that's pretty much the intro for this, except for the noise. I haven't showed you the noise, which really is just with a filter like that. That's it. And then I have these harsh chords, which I put in the drop, and basically they're just really loud. So this is also what's playing in the drop, and I have it in some of the intro. So what I did here was I took out the harmonizer all the way, like this with the harmonizer. That just sounds bad. So I took that out. I have 9 voices of blurred unison. And I decreased the pitch a little bit, and then looks like I have the prism amount. I was experimenting with that, but there's no prism. So yep, and then I'm assuming that most of what I did here I put onto track 21. Track 21, I put on a reverb here. Full reverb, that definitely. So without the reverb, yeah, see, big change with the reverb. And then I have an EQ boosting some highs, which, let me see, play the EQ. So I muted it just so you can hear me talk while I explain the EQ. With this EQ, it is getting the highs, which are right here, which are very little compared to the mids over here. So boosting this would do like much more than even boosting the high all the way. Like this would do more than over here, because most of the synth is happening right here in this range. But over here there's much less. It's still happening, but I wanted to boost that little bit there. So I got that going. So that is the harsh chords, which only play twice in the verse intro thing. And then it goes into the drop where it plays full time. And I do break into a little drum beat here for this little 2-bar verse. And I don't think I showed you the snare, which, oh, that's the wrong snare. This is the main snare, which I put on track 2, where the reverb I did here was basically I turn it up a lot. That's how you get those dubstep snares, is you turn it up a lot. But another way you could do it is use this reverb. To get the dubstep snare, it would be to actually basically put up the high cut and high dampening all the way up. So it does this. And then I found this out because I'm actually currently working on a song right now where I did this. So it sounds like this. And then of course you'd want to like fine tune this, but that's just an idea you could use there. But I just used this for the song because this was plenty enough. So yeah, that's just what I was doing there. Got noise, chords, pads. Looks like I showed you all of that. And then so here in the rise, I just break down the chords to play this. So it's playing less often. And then I actually did put a riser on the sound effect here. Rising it 1 octave. And this is really subtle. No, pretty much all you hear from the riser is, let me mute it and play it, is this frequency right here. That's really all you hear, because this is so quiet in the mix, you really just are hearing this over there, and then that is what's giving it the subtlety that if you listen to Legitness right now, you'd probably be able to hear that. I pointed that out if you haven't heard it already. So the EQ is not doing anything, so I'm just going to take it off. So yeah. And then I'm fading in the pads, noise, then the chords also change. They get to the more frequent pattern. As well as I have the kicks, which speed up every time there's a crash. So it goes from this speed to this speed with a crash, this speed, crash. So it speeds up double time every time. And then I have the harsh chords coming in, and then this bass. So this is an FM synth I made in Citrus, which is probably going to be a couple octaves down. Should be right here. Oh, it's muted. That's why. And I know that that does sound kind of strange, but this is the synth I used in this track. So what I'm doing here with this FM synth is I'm doing a lot of rectangle waves. So I have 2 saw waves for 1 and 2, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all rectangle waves. And then of course their pitch is going from 2 to 32, 32, 64, 64. And then I have the filter enabled with operator 1 with the mode X down to here. So this is marking at this point as 0 and marking at this point as 100 up here. And then through in the matrix here, I have it decreasing in amount. So 2 is all the way up, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6 are decreasing in their percentage of being turned up. And that is because since the pitch is getting higher, you want less of it. Otherwise, it would be like this. It's muted again. So right about here is where you want it. And I know that this doesn't sound super good just in the synth, but when it gets added into the song, you know, that does sound pretty good. So how I got that was I ran it through this EQ, and I have this EQ modulating. So if we go into the song, this will modulate like that. And what that is doing is, since the EQ is moving, that is making it, allowing it to sound better. Because if it's flat, let me just play it. So the EQ's off now. See there, now you can kind of hear the harmonics that aren't very good coming out of Citrus. So modulating the EQ, where I have it run across the whole screen like this, since it's doing that, it's making it low for the beginning and then higher for the end. And then what I'm doing is that's here, that's what this envelope is. And then when those 3 go together, it makes this. And this is the cutoff. As well as I have it going through a Vocodex. This is not really affecting how it sounds in the song, it's just affecting the actual synth itself. So if I took off the Vocodex, it'd be like this. And that's even worse. So normally I would suggest having a good bass is good for your synth right here, but this bass wasn't super good. So if I take off all the effects, this is what it sounds like. You know, that is not very good. Like, don't put that in a song, but then if you put on a Vocodex, a reverb, and an EQ, it sounds like this. That sounds better, and then when you automate the EQ, it sounds like this. And then that's how I got it into the track. So, anyway, off of that tangent, into this Vocodex, I put the wetness all the way and the SG all the way. So with those being all the way up, it did get it really watery. And then the SG does perform compression, for those of you that didn't know that. And then this is the band values. I didn't mess with the band multiplier, or the vocal type, or the harmonizing, because I wanted it to be pretty straight up, so I didn't mess with anything else other than the wetness and SG to add it some compression. And then the reverb here, to add on some reverb just to get it to sound less flat. So it sounds like this rather than this. Sounds better with that reverb. So that's what I have that FM synth doing. And I already showed you the harsh chords. And then now I'm going to show you this bass. So in this bass right here, this one, see, where's what octave? I'm gonna figure out the octave here. I'll just play it on the piano roll so I don't have to do it on the keyboard, but that's a fun bass to play with. So basically, it is having this filter set the range for this. Here it gets way too high. And right here. So what this is doing is this preset is using the prism here mixed with this filter shape to get that synth, especially at a lower pitch, lower octave. And then the gap and the shift is changed in here. Normally it'd be like ×2 and ×2, but this went to ×8 and then ×3, and that gave it this sound instead of this. So instead of sounding like that, it now sounds like this. Very subtle, but it adds on to the sound. And then the prism has addition on the down setting. So the prism amount is on this LFO. So which I can't zoom in or out. It's just this is the LFO that the prism is going through. And then it has a unison pitch thickness on the LFO, which is the low frequency. And then it has the harmonic prism. So this is the harmonics of the prism. And then it has the harmonic unison pitch, which would be the unison here on the pitch here. So that would be right here. So with these knobs, this is the harmonics of the unison and pitch. And then the filter shape right here, which is messing with this and this. So when it plays, and then that's what's happening inside of the Harmor. And then that is how I got the preset. And then on top of the preset, I put on an EQ boosting a little bit of lows, and then I have some reverb on it, because without those, it sounds like this, which is kind of flat. So yeah, that's what's happening with that bass synth. And then it's playing these patterns. So that is the drop for most of the part, and then I have the drum loop. And then with the toms here, I actually just used one set of toms on a piano roll with pitch. And then the reason I did this with the pitch instead of getting multiple tom samples is so all of them could sound the same. So the reason I have these toms doing this is so the pitch can decrease with still having the same sound tom, so it's not like different samples. It still sounds pretty similar, because normally when you have like a drum set like that, like both the toms sound pretty similar rather than having toms that sound completely different, like from two different kits. That is kind of weird. So I cut that out. I mean, I cut out the having multiple toms, so I used one tom. Okay, and then it goes into the bridge, cool off. Let's see, is there any other stuff? I have a sub bass in the verse. Doing that. Looks like that is about it, though. For the second drop, I do go double time. And then it fades out. So that is all of the elements of Legitness. So if you guys have any further questions on this track about any stuff I did that you are questioning or just want to know about, you can put those in the comments section below, and see you guys in next week's video. Bye.